In today's global entertainment landscape, numbers speak loudly. Charts refresh by the minute, rankings circulate at lightning speed, and sales figures are often treated as the final verdict on an artist's worth. Yet every so often, a story emerges that forces us to pause and ask a far more uncomfortable question. What if the loudest numbers are not the clearest truth? What if real influence does not announce itself through headlines, but reveals itself quietly through choices that most people would never dare to make? Recently, one such discussion captured widespread attention across online communities. It did not begin with a scandal, nor with a dramatic rise or fall. It began with a whisper of doubt, a suggestion circulating in public conversations, questioning whether one of the most recognizable figures in Chinese entertainment relied too heavily on sales to maintain his position. That figure was Wang Yibo. And what followed was not simply a defense of one individual, but a much larger reflection on how we define success, power, and responsibility in modern celebrity culture. At first glance, the accusations sounded familiar. In an era shaped by algorithms and instant metrics, many assume that popularity must be engineered, that fan enthusiasm is something to be directed, stimulated, and, at times, exploited. When people see strong sales, the immediate assumption is often control rather than trust. Yet when observers began to look more closely at this particular case, the surface narrative started to crack. Instead of aggressive promotion, there was restraint. Instead of constant reminders to purchase, there were periods of silence. Instead of celebrating visible numbers, there was a noticeable absence of them. Over time, patterns became clear. Sales figures were not highlighted. Purchase windows were limited. Commercial links were quietly removed from live broadcasts. In certain cases, refunds were negotiated to prevent unnecessary spending. These actions stood in stark contrast to the common playbook of the industry. To understand why this matters, it helps to consider the environment in which most artists operate. In highly competitive markets, visibility often equals survival. Every appearance is an opportunity to sell. Every collaboration a chance to maximize exposure. Many performers have little say in how their image is packaged or how their popularity is measured. Decisions are frequently driven by platforms, brands, or short-term commercial incentives. Against this backdrop, choosing to slow down sales is not just unusual, it is risky. It means willingly stepping away from immediate validation. It means trusting that long-term credibility outweighs short-term applause. This is where the conversation deepens, because when someone actively limits what could be maximized, it raises a different question. If the goal was simply to dominate charts, why make it harder? If influence were fragile, why reduce visible proof of it? The answer many observers arrived at was not weakness, but confidence. There is a quiet authority in being able to say no. The authority to decide when to appear, how to present oneself, and, crucially, when not to push. This kind of authority does not come from numbers alone. It comes from a position that has already been secured through consistent work, trust within the industry, and a reputation that does not depend on constant reinforcement. Beyond sales, there are other indicators that speak volumes. Creative autonomy is one of them. When an artist has the freedom to shape their own visual style, to influence how they are presented rather than being reshaped to fit trends, it signals a balance of power. When collaborations feel like partnerships rather than endorsements, it suggests mutual respect. Over time, these subtleties accumulate into something far more enduring than a single successful release. They form a professional identity that audiences recognize instinctively, even if they cannot always articulate why. Equally important is the emotional dimension of this discussion. Fans are often portrayed as numbers, segments, or demographics. But at the heart of any lasting career is a relationship built on understanding. Small gestures can reveal more than grand campaigns. Choosing not to pressure supporters into spending, offering experiences rather than transactions, creating moments that feel personal rather than promotional. These choices send a clear message. Appreciation does not always need to be monetized. Loyalty does not need to be tested. In a system that frequently encourages excess, restraint can feel unexpectedly humane. As the debate continued, it became clear that this was no longer about defending one individual against criticism. It had evolved into a broader reflection on values. Many viewers began to compare different models of success. One relies on constant output, visible dominance, and relentless competition. The other prioritizes sustainability, discretion, and long-term relevance. Neither is inherently right or wrong, but the contrast is revealing. In a culture saturated with noise, silence can be a strategic choice. In an industry obsessed with speed, patience can be a strength. There is also a generational aspect to consider. Younger audiences raised in a digital environment are increasingly aware of how easily numbers can be manipulated. Older viewers with longer memories recognize patterns of rise and fall. Both groups understand in different ways that longevity requires more than momentum. It requires judgment, the ability to navigate pressure without being consumed by it, the willingness to step back before being pushed. Perhaps the most striking element of this story is how it challenges our instinctive reactions. We are conditioned to equate visibility with value, activity with importance. Yet here is a case where the absence of certain signals became the strongest signal of all. It invited audiences to look beyond the surface and consider intention, to ask not just what is being done, but why it is being done. And in that space, a different narrative emerged, one about responsibility, about boundaries, and about the quiet confidence to let work speak over time. This perspective resonates far beyond one industry or one country. In many creative fields, people are re-evaluating what success looks like. Burnout, overexposure, and fleeting fame have become cautionary tales. More voices are advocating for balance, for careers built on substance rather than spectacle. In that context, stories like this act as mirrors. They reflect our own questions about pace, pressure, and purpose. Ultimately, the debate leaves us with a simple yet profound takeaway. Numbers can open doors, but they cannot keep them open forever. Applause can be loud, but it fades quickly. What endures is the ability to make conscious choices, to maintain integrity under scrutiny, and to respect the people who choose to walk alongside you. Real influence often reveals itself not in moments of noise, but in moments of restraint, not in what is shown, but in what is deliberately held back. As viewers, we are invited to reconsider how we judge success, to listen not only to what is amplified, but to what is quietly consistent. To recognize that sometimes the most powerful statement is not made through promotion, but through principle. And in an age where everything seems designed to shout for attention, that kind of quiet certainty may be the rarest form of strength. Thank you for spending this time with Starwatch Now. If you found this perspective thoughtful or refreshing, we invite you to subscribe to the channel and become part of our growing global community. Your support allows us to continue exploring stories beyond the surface, connecting the dots between public conversation and deeper meaning. We truly appreciate every viewer who chooses to watch, reflect, and engage with us. Stay curious, stay open-minded, and remember to follow Star Watch now for more calm, insightful storytelling from the world of entertainment and beyond.